By now, everyone has heard about God of War, the reviews giving it perfect or near perfect scores, people trying to hide spoilers but gushing over the game, the atmosphere around the game being a more heightened version of what Celeste went through earlier this year. There is no mistaking that there is something going on here. Going into God of War, I had other people's tidbits and the pressure of a masterpiece put on me. Would I be able to see the game that everyone else was talking about? By the time I finished the game, I found something different than everyone, at least from a talking point and narrative perspective. God of War is a narrative game that takes pride in its story. This is deserved because of the great characters. You spend so much time with Kratos and Atreus getting to know them and the relationship dynamics. With a fun cast of side characters that fills out the rest of the story, the world really takes shape and feels lived in. There are problems, though. There are multiple times when dialogue wasn't convincing or seemed out of place, actions taken by characters, or the progression of events seemed off at times. It may have problems, but I still love the story. The game tries its hardest to present a compelling narrative that really translates through to the player. I loved my time with Kratos and Atreus and hope to eventually continue their story. An extra tidbit of information that I thought of while playing the game is that Kratos and Atreus acted like the player would. They would give voice to my thoughts through their casual dialogue. It really added to the experience. I didn't know what to expect when I first started God of War. I knew I would be fighting things, but nothing prepared me for the depth of gameplay that this game has. God of War is an RPG from a functionality standpoint. You get gear with stats, you craft armor, upgrade armor, find armor. This also includes buying stat upgrades and so much more. I am someone who doesn't like these games. I don't like min-maxing, but God of War makes it fun and easy enough for someone like me to use the system. It also has the capabilities for someone who wants to dive in and tinker with all the intricacies. The actual combat is great. The axe is such a good weapon with lots of variation on how you use it. You can also go barehanded and fist fight, which is also really fun. You have stats and a power level, your enemies have levels. The main story does a great job pacing the enemy variety and difficulty to keep the game challenging. There are higher leveled enemies and really hard boss fights in the game that are optional if you want more of a challenge as well. Like I said before, God of War is like other games, but is also incredibly unique. The gear stats remind me of Horizon Zero Dawn, but better. The focus on narrative trends towards what Naughty Dog started with Uncharted and The Last of Us, but is completely different in its direction and its dedication to the story it's crafting. It plays like an infamous game from Sucker Punch, but more engaging. You even open chests like in Knack, but it's actually fun to play God of War. So not only is the game a beacon of creativity and enjoyment among its peers, but it also towers over all other games as well. Even though the new direction of story takes center stage, there is so much actual game here. It doesn't matter that it feels linear because this game has done what no other game in the modern era has been able to do. It has married linear storytelling and an open world. God of War is an open world game. While playing it, it feels linear. Then it opens up. You explore the main area of the game and you feel free to do what you like, but the story hook is still there. Halfway through the game, it fully becomes an open world, not succumbing to any of the open world problems. In Breath of the Wild, you had a game that reached a peak of greatness, that all other games in that series helped to get it there. In Mario Odyssey, you had an amazing game with great gameplay that reached its peak of near perfection. These two games have in common with God of War one of the most important things in games. A world that is a pleasure to be in, with amazing gameplay, a modern-day masterpiece. But God of War marries that gameplay and open world to narrative the way those games cannot. Breath of the Wild failed in its storytelling. The base game was fine, but the DLC, which promised more story, fell flat in that regard. It showed that the lack of story wasn't something that the team specifically wanted to do, or they caved to fan demands. The shitty story in Odyssey was completely fucking stupid. I mean, Mario games are not known for their stories, but the inclusion of a bad one hurts it in that aspect. Not talking about Nintendo, take any other open world game. The story is always at odds with its core gameplay loop of being in an open world, no matter how good the game. Even a game I like very much that came out this year, Far Cry 5, did this. You were never in control when you got to partake in that story, and the ending made me never want to go back. When I look at the top 10 games I've played, God of War deserves a spot on that list. I don't know who to kick off, but the other games will make room. As a final note, I want to talk about Legacy and respect. No one has this more than Nintendo with its IP, especially Mario and the Legend of Zelda series. Those games have a presence unlike any other due to their long pasts. It infuses those games with and creates games which seem impossible to replicate. I have not played many games from those franchises, yet I felt what I'm talking about in their latest releases. God of War is finally a game I can feel legacy in. The respect to what was before and the ability to look to the future. That deep sense of legacy people were quick to judge, seeing it so different than before. The dedication to spectacle and scale, of heart and of presence. People feel nostalgic for past company mascots and their historic past, but God of War reaches that peak. Uncharted was the game from Sony where I felt the love for its history in its final game, but God of War reaches the mountaintop. It has the love, the gravitas, to not only understand its root, but completely change. Nintendo is lonely no longer. God of War has its flaws, sure, but man, oh man, is it one of the best goddamn games I have ever played and loved.